She was my boss, confident, untouchable. But that night, when she said, "Sit down, tonight you're working just for me," everything between us changed. The office was supposed to be silent at this hour. The kind of silence that makes you realize just how empty a place can feel once everyone has gone home. Desks cleared, computers shut down, even the hum of the vending machine in the hallway seemed faint against the steady rhythm of the rain sliding down the glass windows. I hadn't planned to still be here. My bag was packed, jacket slung over my chair, when the message came through, "Can you stop by my office before you leave?" Simple words, but from her, they carried weight. She was my boss, confident, respected, the kind of woman who could command a room with a single look. And yet, there was something in her tone that felt less formal. When I knocked softly and stepped inside, the sight caught me off guard. The harsh fluorescent lights were off, only a desk lamp glowed warmly in the corner, throwing golden light across polished wood and shadowing the edges of the room. She wasn't behind her desk like she usually was. Instead, she was sitting back casually on the leather couch near the window, one hand resting against the arm, the other holding a half-empty glass of water. Her heels had been kicked off to the side, her posture relaxed, almost too relaxed for the woman I thought I knew. "Sit down," she said, her voice calm but edged with a playful tease. Her eyes lingered on me just a second longer than necessary. "Tonight you're working just for me." I froze, unsure how to take her words. She wasn't smiling exactly, not in the polite way she usually did in meetings. This was different. A small, knowing curve of her lips, a look that felt like she was testing me, waiting to see how I'd respond. For a moment, the air between us carried a quiet tension. I wasn't sure if she meant it as a joke, or if this was one of those moments where words meant more than what was spoken. I sat down, slowly, across from her. The leather creaked softly under my weight, the sound oddly loud in the stillness. The faint scent of her perfume lingered in the room, delicate but impossible to ignore. Something floral, mixed with warmth, like the last breath of summer fading into autumn. My throat felt dry, though I hadn't spoken yet. She tilted her head, studying me as though she was searching for something she couldn't quite name. In the office during the day, she was polished, precise, always busy. But right now, with her shoes off and her hair falling loosely against her shoulders, she looked human. Different. I tried to speak something professional, something to ease the tension, but my words caught in my throat. She gave a soft laugh, low and warm, and the sound filled the room in a way that made my chest tighten. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about work at all. I expected her to hand me a file, maybe ask me to run through numbers or check over some documents. That's what I told myself as I waited, sitting stiffly on the edge of the couch. But she didn't. Instead, she leaned back against the cushions, drawing one leg up beneath her, a gesture so casual it made the space between us feel strangely personal. She set her glass down on the low table, folded her arms loosely, and said, almost playfully, "Relax. I don't need another spreadsheet tonight. I just need you to keep me company." The words startled me. For a moment, I wasn't sure how to respond. She was my boss, the woman everyone admired from a careful distance. The one who walked through the office with quiet authority, always perfectly put together, always busy, always just out of reach. Yet here she was, asking for something that had nothing to do with deadlines or reports. Her eyes flickered over to me, catching the hesitation in my expression. "Don't look so nervous," she teased softly. You make it sound like I'm asking for the impossible. I tried to smile, though my chest felt tight. I guess I'm just not used to this side of you. That earned me the faintest laugh, but it wasn't mocking, it was lighter, almost relieved. That's the point, she said. Everyone sees me as the boss. No one bothers to ask what I need once the day is over. She paused, her gaze drifting toward the rain-slicked window. I think I just wanted someone who wouldn't treat me like a title for once. The admission hung in the air, soft but weighted. She hadn't raised her voice, yet her words filled the room, leaving me speechless for a moment. I nodded slowly, leaning back into the couch, trying to match the ease in her posture. So what does that mean for me? Am I supposed to listen? She smiled again, but this time it was smaller, almost shy. That's a good start. And so we talked. At first, about harmless things, the weather, the traffic, the kind of filler conversation you use when you're not sure how far you're allowed to go. But gradually, it shifted. She asked me what I thought about a decision she'd made earlier that day, not in the way a boss asks for feedback, but in the way a woman asks if she's being too hard on herself. She wanted honesty, not formality. I found myself speaking more freely than I ever had with her before. Telling her how the team really admired her, how people respected her for reasons she probably didn't even notice. She listened carefully, eyes locked on mine, as if each word mattered more than I realized. Somewhere in the middle of the conversation, I noticed the change. The office, once intimidating, felt smaller, warmer. The glow of the lamp softened the lines of her face, making her look less like the boss and more like a woman, beautiful, but with something fragile hiding beneath her confidence. When she laughed again, this time at something clumsy I said, her hand brushed against her hair, tucking it behind her ear in a way that seemed unconsciously intimate. My chest tightened at the sight. She didn't even realize how effortlessly she pulled me in. It struck me then, this wasn't about work at all. She wasn't asking me to fix her problems. She just wanted me there. To be present, to see her as more than a position or a title. And though I couldn't say it aloud, part of me knew, I wanted that too. Somewhere between her stories and my clumsy attempts at humor, I stopped thinking about the time. The office outside her door had gone completely dark, the rain tapping steady against the windows like a quiet metronome. Inside her office, though, the lamp cast its warm glow across the space, wrapping the two of us in a cocoon that felt oddly separate from the rest of the world. The conversation drifted away from work entirely. We spoke about childhood memories, favorite music, even silly things like which coffee shop near the office was overrated. She leaned in when I spoke, eyes focused on me in a way that was unnerving but thrilling. Her laugh came easier now, softer, more genuine than the polite chuckles I'd heard during meetings. I noticed the way her lips curved when she smiled, how her eyes softened when she was amused. And I caught myself wondering, not for the first time that evening, if I was seeing something I wasn't meant to. At one point, I reached across the table for my cup, and my knee brushed lightly against hers. It was barely a touch, just the faintest pressure through fabric, but it was enough to send a quick jolt through me. I pulled back instinctively, murmuring an apology, but she didn't move away. Instead, her eyes flicked down for a second, then back up to meet mine. She gave the smallest smile, one so subtle that if I hadn't been watching her so closely, I might have missed it. And she didn't shift her leg. She left it there, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her presence even without contact. That was when I realized, silence between us wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was heavy, charged, full of things neither of us dared to say. Every pause stretched just long enough to feel meaningful. I found myself studying her in the quiet moments, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she grew thoughtful, the way her fingers traced absent circles along the rim of her glass. She wasn't putting on her usual mask of authority tonight. She wasn't the boss, not really. She was just her. She must have felt my gaze, because she looked up suddenly, catching me in the act. For a heartbeat too long, neither of us looked away. Her expression softened, vulnerable, questioning, as though she was silently asking what I saw when I looked at her like that. My chest tightened. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to tell her she didn't have to be flawless all the time, that she was captivating just as she was in this moment, barefoot, hair loose, sitting across from me in the quiet. But the words stuck. So instead, I just held her gaze, letting the silence say everything my voice couldn't. The rain pressed harder against the glass, a gentle storm muffling the city outside. The world beyond those windows seemed distant, irrelevant. It was just us. Her eyes, my heartbeat, and the unspoken truth that something was shifting between us. And though neither of us said it, we both knew this was no longer just a late-night meeting. Something deeper had begun to take root. The rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle, its rhythm softer now, like background music to the quiet between us. For a long moment, she didn't speak. She just sat there, her gaze lowered, fingers absently twisting the silver ring on her hand. It struck me how rare it was to see her like this, still, contemplative, without the shield of confidence she always wore at work. Finally, she exhaled, her voice low. "Do you know what's exhausting?" She didn't wait for my answer. Always having to be the strong one. Always pretending I have it together, even when I don't. Her tone wasn't sharp like it sometimes was in meetings. It was softer, almost fragile. A confession slipping past her lips before she could stop it. I leaned forward slightly, careful not to move too quickly, not to break the delicate balance of the moment. "You don't have to pretend with me," I said quietly. She looked up at me then, her eyes searching, as if she was trying to measure how much she could believe in that promise. And in that gaze, I saw it, the weight she carried. Not just the responsibilities of her position, but the loneliness that came with it. Everyone admired her strength, but maybe no one had stopped to ask if she ever needed someone to lean on. Her lips parted, but no words came right away. Instead, she gave a small, almost self-deprecating smile. "That's easy for you to say. To everyone else, I'm untouchable. The boss. The woman who doesn't need anyone." Her voice faltered slightly, and she shook her head. "But the truth is, sometimes I just want to stop being that person. Just for a little while." Her honesty tightened something in my chest. I had always respected her, her composure, her intelligence, the way she carried herself. But now, seeing her like this, I felt something deeper. Protective, almost. Like I was being trusted with a part of her no one else was allowed to see. "You don't have to be untouchable with me," I said again, my voice steadier this time. She gave a soft laugh, though it wasn't humor, it was disbelief, maybe even relief. "You're too young to understand what it's like. To build your life on being strong, and then wonder if anyone would still care for you if you weren't." Her vulnerability made my pulse quicken. Not out of pity, but because in that moment, she wasn't just my boss. She was a woman brave enough to let her mask slip, even if only for a little while. Without thinking, I shifted closer, the space between us narrowing. My hand rested lightly on the edge of the table, not touching hers but close enough to show I wasn't pulling away. Her eyes flickered down at the small gap, then back up to me. She didn't move. She didn't retreat behind her usual composure. The air was different now, softer, more fragile, but also more intimate. She had shown me her weakness, and I couldn't unsee it. I didn't want to. And in that quiet, as the rain softened to a whisper outside, I realized something. She wasn't just my boss anymore. She was someone I wanted to know, completely, strength, flaws, and everything in between. The room had grown impossibly quiet. Not the empty silence of an office after hours, but something heavier, filled with the weight of everything unspoken. The rain outside had slowed to a soft patter, as if even the world beyond the windows had decided not to interrupt. She sat across from me, but it felt as though the space between us had all but disappeared. Her posture wasn't the rigid, polished stance of a woman in charge. She leaned slightly forward, her elbow resting on the arm of the couch, her chin balanced lightly against her hand. Her eyes never left mine, and I felt every second of that gaze like a steady current running through me. Then, almost without thinking, she reached out. Just a small gesture, her hand resting briefly against mine on the table. But the moment her skin brushed against me, something shifted. The contact was delicate, feather-light, yet it carried a warmth that made my pulse leap. I should have pulled away. Every logical part of me screamed that I should. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I turned my palm slightly upward, meeting her touch, letting it linger. She didn't withdraw. Her fingers stayed where they were, her thumb brushing once, so faintly it could have been accidental, though we both knew it wasn't. "Thank you," she said softly, almost a whisper. Her eyes softened, and for the first time all evening, she looked less like a figure of authority and more like a woman who needed someone. For staying. For listening. Her words carried more meaning than they should have, and my chest tightened. I wanted to tell her it wasn't just duty, that I wasn't here because she asked, I was here because I wanted to be. But my voice caught, stuck somewhere between my thoughts and my heart. Instead, I only nodded. "You don't need to thank me." My voice was low, unsteady, betraying just how much I meant it. She studied me then, her head tilted ever so slightly, as though she could read everything I wasn't saying. And maybe she could. Because in that moment, it felt as though she saw right through me, past my careful restraint, past my attempts to appear composed. Her hand didn't move. Neither did mine. The air between us thickened, heavy with the possibility of what might come next. Our eyes locked, longer this time, unbroken, charged with a tension that felt almost dangerous. My breath slowed, my chest rising and falling in rhythm with hers, as if we'd unconsciously synced. The silence wasn't empty now, it was alive, buzzing, full of words we were both too afraid to speak aloud. For a heartbeat, I thought she might close the distance. Her lips parted slightly, her gaze dipping toward mine, then back up again. My own breath caught, every nerve in my body bracing for the moment when unspoken would turn into undeniable. But then she hesitated. Her hand slipped from mine slowly, almost reluctantly, as if she had to force herself to break the contact. She leaned back, putting a sliver of distance between us, her composure faltering just enough to reveal the struggle in her eyes. And though nothing had been said, though nothing had technically happened, the truth was undeniable, we had crossed a line. Not with action, but with everything that hovered in the quiet between us. The air between us was different now, thicker, charged, like the seconds before a storm breaks. Her hand had slipped from mine, but the echo of her touch still lingered, as if my skin remembered what my mind couldn't stop replaying. She leaned back into the couch, her shoulders tense despite her outward calm. For a moment she stared at the ceiling, almost as if searching for the right words there. Then her gaze dropped to me again, softer this time, more vulnerable. "This," she began, then stopped, exhaling slowly. "This was never about work, was it?" Her question hung in the air, heavy with the truth we had both been avoiding. My chest tightened, my thoughts stumbling over themselves. She had said what I hadn't dared to voice. I swallowed, my throat dry. "No," I admitted, my voice low but steady. "Not for me." Her lips curved, not into a smirk, not into her usual confident smile, but into something quieter, something that trembled just slightly at the edges. Relief, maybe. Or resignation. I thought so. Her words were barely more than a whisper. She shifted closer, not enough to erase the space between us, but enough to make the distance feel intentional. Her presence was magnetic. Every breath I drew felt filled with her. "I don't want tonight to end," I said before I could stop myself. The confession slipped out raw, stripped of all the careful restraint I'd tried to keep. Her eyes closed briefly, as if steadying herself, before opening again to meet mine. "You have no idea how dangerous that is to say," she murmured. But her voice didn't carry warning, it carried longing. The silence stretched, filled with possibility. She didn't move, didn't push me away, but she didn't close the gap either. Instead, she left it hanging between us like a question, like she wanted me to be the one to decide. Her hand lifted slowly, almost hesitant, and brushed against my cheek. It wasn't a bold touch. It was delicate, tentative, as though she was testing the ground beneath us. The pad of her thumb lingered just below my eye, the touch so light it could have been imagined. I leaned into it without thinking. My eyes closed, my breath shaky. That single motion felt like surrender, like admitting what I had been trying to hold back all night. When I opened my eyes again, she was watching me closely, her expression unreadable but full of something fierce and unspoken. "You're young," she said softly, her hand still against my face. "And I'm supposed to know better. But right now, I don't want to." Her words pierced through me, a mixture of warning and invitation. The world seemed to shrink around us, just her, just me, and the choice dangling in the air. I wanted to answer, to tell her that none of it mattered, that I saw her, not her age, not her title. But my voice caught. Instead, I simply covered her hand with mine, pressing it gently against my cheek. And in that gesture, I gave her my answer. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The world outside was hushed, the drizzle on the windows a soft rhythm that filled the silence we couldn't. Her hand remained beneath mine, warm against my cheek, and I realized how much had changed in just a single night. She wasn't just my boss anymore. She was a woman, sitting across from me, with her guard down and her heart exposed. I shifted closer, slow enough that she could stop me if she wanted. She didn't. Instead, she let her hand slide from my face, down to my shoulder, resting there as if anchoring herself in the moment. My chest ached with everything I wanted to say but couldn't. How she'd haunted my thoughts long before tonight. How every smile, every brief glance in the office had meant more to me than I could admit. But words felt too fragile for the weight of what was stirring between us. So I leaned forward just enough, wrapping my arm gently around her shoulders. She stiffened for a heartbeat, instinct tugging at her to pull away, but then she let out a soft sigh and melted against me. The shift was subtle but complete. She let her head rest against my chest, the strands of her hair brushing lightly against my chin. I held her close, careful, as though too much pressure might break the spell. Her perfume was faint now, mixed with the warmth of her skin, something uniquely hers. My hand traced a slow, absent pattern along her arm, not daring to do more, just enough to let her know I was here, that I wasn't going anywhere. "This is crazy," she whispered after a while, her words muffled against me. "Maybe," I admitted. "But it doesn't feel wrong." She tilted her head slightly, just enough for her eyes to find mine. In the dim glow of the lamp, her gaze held something unguarded, something raw. "We can't pretend this won't complicate everything." "I know," I said softly. And I did. Tomorrow, the world would come crashing back, the office, the titles, the expectations. But tonight wasn't about rules. It was about truth. Her lips parted as though she wanted to argue, but instead she gave a small, tired smile. "Then maybe just for tonight, we don't think about tomorrow." I nodded, pressing my forehead lightly against hers, the closeness almost too much to bear. No kiss, no words, just that fragile, electric space where both of us admitted without speaking that we wanted this, even if neither of us knew what it meant. We stayed like that, holding on to one another as the minutes slipped by unnoticed. The office around us faded into the background, the polished furniture, the files on her desk, the rain tapping its steady rhythm. All that mattered was the warmth of her in my arms, the quiet of her breathing, and the way she let herself rest against me as if she had finally found a place to be still. Tomorrow would come. The questions, the doubts, the decisions, we'd face them then. But for now, in that small, sacred pocket of time, there was only us. And it was enough.